This is the Beyond the Dojo podcast. I'm Lauren.
I'm Jeremiah.
And I think Jeremiah had a funny story to share.
Oh, that was an odd transition.
I know. I figured you'd just like launch into it, but anyway.
So the other week we had in my 6 to 8-year-olds class, we did the kick over the belt challenge. You know, make sure your foot's above the belt so you don't knock it down or anything. And I made it a challenge, so whoever did the most could name the game at the end of the class. Mm-hmm. It's a simple challenge, right? And we had a young female student that took it pretty seriously and did like 60 in a row. Like she had no problem. Bam. It was kind of cool. So I thought nothing of it. And the next class was the following Monday. And her parents told me that she had done nothing but challenged everybody she knew to the kicking challenge and must have done at least 500 kicks over the weekend.
Oh my gosh.
So I thought to myself, oh boy, we got a student on our hands.
And she also, when Jeremiah was like, "What game do you want to play?" at the end of class.
Oh, she was like, the kicking challenge.
I want to kick over the belt. Jeremiah's like, "Well, that wasn't really a game." But you just imagine this kid just walking up to people like, "Hey, I challenge you to kick over the belt challenge." That's how we solve problems out in these streets.
Listen though, you always want to encourage that kind of like
yeah.
I mean,
development
and how they're hard. Like some people are just hardwired that way.
Yeah.
Like that's just who they are.
This is my fun. I kick over belts.
Yeah. And you know, I don't ever would discourage any kind of competitiveness. I think it's a great thing, especially in small children. Mm-hmm. And it's awesome because she definitely has a fine line between being really competitive and wanting to win, but understanding that she doesn't always win.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like she's a cool student. I'm starting to appreciate that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And her mom used to do Taekwondo, I think, back in the day, so that probably also helps with how she's rearing her.
Yeah, well, they're just both hardwired the same way.
Yeah, right.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So today's podcast topic is kind of based on, obviously this is being published way after the fact, but I'm part of a personal training organization, and there's this female trainer that they recognized a couple of different times, and this year the award that she won was Trainer of the Year. Now, I follow her on Instagram. I don't know anything about her other than the few things that she's posted. I don't know her contribution to this association, to personal training in general, but she's definitely somebody that doesn't, quote, look the part. So you can imagine she
kind of looks like me.
She is definitely the larger build.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean she's not a good trainer. But I don't know anything about her, but she doesn't really look the part. So that kind of got me thinking, and I put something in my Instagram story about this, is sort of related, sort of not. The conversation in the comments underneath the post about her was, is she even capable of performing the exercises that she asks her clients to do? You can't really make that judgment call just by looking at somebody. But it made me think, does a sensei need to be able to physically perform what they teach? And maybe I'll read some of the responses that I got before we respond, maybe? Does that work? You want to give your opinion first?
No, it's all good. You could change it like that.
I didn't know what we were doing.
You talked about it right beforehand. I mean, we agreed upon something.
Okay, go for it.
No, we're good.
Okay.
Do it your way.
Well, here are a few responses. One said, "This is an interesting conversation, but the shorter answer is yes." On the flip side, somebody said, "Knowledge is knowledge. Not everyone is capable of moving the same way." Another person said, "It depends. Age and medical conditions can prevent some things from being physically done." So that's kind of middle ground. Another person said, "No, some of the best coaches in the world can't demonstrate what they teach." Another person said, "My sensei always says, don't do what I do what I say." So that's more of the no side. Another person said, "Yes, unless they're old and can no longer move that way, but still have years of experience." Another person said, "No, age comes for everybody." So they're saying, medical conditions, age, whatever, you might be skilled as a coach and not need to be able to physically perform. So that was some of the main ones. So what are your thoughts on that so far?
I'm torn. Because I don't, first of all, not all athletes look the same.
Okay.
You got NFL linemen that are amazing athletes, but they don't look like it, right? They don't have that beach body kind of thing where we in our mind, that's what we think of, right? That being said, you can't judge a book by its cover. And same with karate, a sensei might not look the greatest, might not be the healthiest looking, but if he could still do the techniques and properly with coordination and timing, I say No, they don't have to be super fit as
Right,
long as
so-
you're doing the techniques correctly.
Right. So that wasn't the question. The question was, okay, go for it.
Thanks.
Okay, you're
I
welcome.
appreciate your permission.
Okay.
But on the other hand, you have really good athletes, really good, people that do karate, and they're great performers. They're world champions in a sense, and they can't teach a lick. Mm-hmm. They just don't have it in them. Mm-hmm. They can't. They're great personal coaches on themselves and motivate themselves to train, and sometimes they have natural ability that they cannot relate to other people.
Right.
So it's a yes and no question to me, and that for that is, well, it's a yes and no answer, not question, but answer. As long as the sensei or teacher, coach, whatever, has a fundamental understanding of what they're teaching, I say no. Because if
They don't have to go perform.
No, they don't have to perform. Because, like a lot of the comments, it was like a health issue, injury issues, things like that. I get it, especially in karate, bad hips, bad knees. That takes a lot away from what we're doing. But if you understand how to do it and you have a really sound understanding of technique, then no, you don't need to. Mm-hmm. But yes, you do. Mm-hmm. In a sense, like, yes, you there has to be aspects of your karate where you should be able to show them at a high level, and it could be simple techniques, simple, kihon combos or even kata, where it's just, you could tell that back in the day they had it and they just, health issues got in the way. Mm-hmm. So that's my answer. I know it's not really an answer, but to me, it depends on the situation. It depends on the person.
Right.
And that's how I look at it. 'Cause I don't know. I'm not the most healthy looking person, and my kicks aren't the greatest.
Okay.
Right? But I have a solid foundation on how to do the kicks. I understand the principles behind it, and I understand what needs to be done.
Right.
But to perform them now, not so much.
I don't know about that. Your kicks are fine. I mean, what can you not perform?
Side snap kick. I've been working on since this podcast started. I've been working consistently on my side snap kicks,
right.
and I'm still have an impingement in my hip when I do it, and I'm not injuring myself anymore in the sense I'm not having growing pulls. Mm-hmm. So I can't really say I'm doing it at a level where people go, oh, okay, that's how you do it.
Okay, so I think okay. Let's get into that just a second, because I think that's a different conversation. So let's start with beginners. So if you have a beginner coming in, I think as a teacher it is difficult to teach a beginner in words only.
Yeah,
I think if you can't demonstrate anything, it is going to be super hard for you to be able to have a beginner student who has a strong fundamental grasp of what is being coached. I mean, if as a trainer I have somebody come in, I could probably tell them to squat and then make corrections without necessarily showing them, because most people have background knowledge of what a squat is. But you're asking for sports specific movement. It's fundamental, but it is sports specific, and most people, you ask somebody to punch and they do all kinds of crazy stuff, and you can give technical correction, but there's something
you have to demonstrate
insanely valuable, of them being able to
to
see that visual in front of them.
But it's not necessary. Well, on that side note, it's not necessary to demonstrate every time. You should demonstrate maybe 50% of the time, and then it should wean off as they train, because you want them to understand what they're doing, not just looking at the picture and going, oh, that's what it looks like.
So now we had this really interesting conversation with Steve Google Sensei a number of weeks ago, and he said that when he was teaching beginners, when he coached at the college, that he was training with them, and we were like, wait, what?
Yeah.
6 hours a day. And I had never heard this before, and we've been having conversations with him for a number of years. He said that he would get up there and he would demonstrate, and he would do it pretty much the majority of the class. And I was like, well, how do you teach that way? But he said that it's a super solid reinforcement of what they're learning, because they're seeing really good form over and over and over again. So I think there's kind of both. If you can see that really good image of what good is supposed to look like, and you just keep emulating, because that's what students do, is they emulate the teacher. So that's that's where it's I think if you're training beginners, showing them lots of times, especially early on, is a great way to reinforce that fundamental of what they're supposed to look like.
Well, let's also understand that he was teaching college-aged adults. If you're teaching kids, so I take the approach in my 68 class that I demonstrate a little bit, but then I'm always talking to them about like what does a front stance need? What does a kick need? So that they understand that in front stance, the front knee has to be bent, the feet are pointing the direction you're facing, and majority your weight's forward.
Right.
Those things, like just understanding the concepts or having them kind of repeated over and over again to lay that foundation, I think works out well. Their form ain't great, but they understand what they need to do.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? Like, so it's an argument either way.
Right. I mean, so with the younger classes, we tend to demonstrate more, especially like 4 and 5-year-olds. Like you tell them, hey, do this. And they're like, what is that? So I'm like saying it and physically performing it at the same time.
Right.
And sometimes I look at the older classes that we teach where we don't demonstrate as much, and I think, well, maybe I should be demonstrating more because like you use the same words and you keep repeating to them what to do, and like they'll get it sort of, but then they don't continue the correction. So it makes me wonder, like, should I as a teacher be demonstrating more so they can get that visual reinforcement as well? Because a lot of people are visual learners. So maybe that we're kind of missing that there, but we do have the ability to do that if we choose to.
Yeah, I would say a decent standard, yeah.
Yeah. But then if we start talking intermediate and higher level individuals. So this is where, like, what I was arguing about your kicks is you're teaching beginners, they need the fundamental position, and obviously we want to present the best package of technique that we can to beginners also. But I think the deeply technical stuff is going to matter even more with higher level people. So like if you're, if I'm struggling with step and punch and you're struggling with side snap kick, and we're trying to prevent them from having the problems that we have, obviously we want to be able to demonstrate to them how to do this technical thing correctly.
Right.
But then also we're working on it. So, I mean, that comes down to, I think, a humility thing. Like, hey, this is something I'm still working on, but
no, I agree.
are still demonstrating maybe.
Oh yeah, no, but our guideline also is work within your ability. If you can't kick above your head, don't.
Right.
Don't try to kick above your head. Don't try to do those things. If you're not agile, then work within what you can do and try to build from there. You know what I'm saying? I come from an age where senseis walked on water, they did everything great, and we tried to be like them. And then as they got older, we watched them fall apart and not do the things they used to do. And it's like, yeah. So, man, that's a difficult question, right?
Well, and I think it's kind of two different issues. Is it a physical ability thing because of age or lack of athleticism? Or is it an inability because you don't have the technical understanding in your own karate to be able to perform? So that was actually what I was thinking of, but most people kind of went the other direction. And that's fine because both are valid.
Right.
But I think you get different results based on what it is. Yeah. So this whole thing with Nishiyama, because that was somebody came back later and they were making, hold on, let me read what he said. Yeah. He said, Nishiyama was never going to unsu jump again prior to his passing. That said, if an instructor is south of 50, you should be able to perform what you teach. So that's one of the big things about Nishiyama is like there's an obvious difference in the people who trained with him in his earlier years versus his later years. And he was still a good instructor. There were lots of things supposedly, like from what we've been told, there were lots of things that were lost in translation because, English was his second language. And he had certain ways of like overemphasizing certain points.
Right.
But what he could physically do in his later years versus in his earlier years were very different. Yeah. He looked very different. Right. And also his students looked very different.
Yeah. First 3 generations of Nishiyama students were super dynamic.
And we're saying that looking from the perspective of now, of many decades later, we're looking at those groups of people and they don't look like they had the same instructor at all.
Right. And that's no disrespect to anybody that was a Nishiyama student at any time of his career. he was an amazing teacher, and he obviously taught to what he was, where his mind was, where his body was during his lifetime. You know what I mean?
Well, so it's my understanding that he was still trying, I think, and maybe in general, to teach the same stuff. Like maybe some things were different, but his ability to demonstrate wasn't there anymore.
Right.
So, like it or not, good instructor or not, students are watching how you perform.
Right.
And, you know, they did what they saw. I mean, that's what we've been told, is that those students did what they saw. So when they saw some of the things that he did, that's what they emulated. I'll just leave it at that.
Exactly.
So that's just one example.
Yeah. Gosh, the more you think about it, right? Ray Dalkey. Good Lord.
I don't know what those guys look like, but
Smith. Yabe. All those guys, man, back in the early 70s, 60s, early 70s.
Steve Wubel.
Compared to the guys, you know, Avi Roka, Toru Shimoji from the late 80s, early 90s.
They look very different.
If you put videos next to each other, it is not the same.
Right. You can't tell that they have the same instructor.
Right. No, that's a great point.
You know, and if as an instructor you want to, you know, have consistency, I think that's definitely a challenge. So like I think that was physically, like he just was older and like couldn't demo anymore. So if instead you have someone who is, let's say, a higher ranking Dan ranked person, and they fancy themselves to be a higher ranking Dan person, and they have not taken the time to make technical correction yet, for whatever reason they're a high ranking Dan person,
maintain whatever they were doing to get that rank.
And you know, they're going to seminars and they're learning stuff from teachers, and then they're going back to their dojos and they're teaching that stuff, and they never actually trained any of it, and they never got really good at it.
True understanding, right? Yeah. Understanding is cerebral and physical, right? It has to be both. So I get that.
So that's very much like an understanding and technical ability question.
Yeah.
Like, do you have to have the understanding and technical ability physically to be able to teach something?
So I feel like we're talking about the guy that enjoys the after training dinner more than the training itself.
Mic drop.
The
after training beer.
You know, you might, you know, that then I'd literally say no. You have to be able to perform it, because those are things that you choose to do. You choose not to train. You choose to overindulge. Then there's no compassion there for me. You know, I expect you to be able to do it.
Here's maybe another example that's a combination of both. So my mentor, from the time I was like young teenager until I was in my early 20s, invested a lot of time in me, helped with so much stuff up to like Nidan level. He was ranked Nidan, and he was in his day a good Nidan. And so because at one point he had been a good Nidan, he was able to coach me to that point. We'll say good in quotes, like subjective. Well, for where he was a Takashina student, and you know,
Takashina student, early 70s. So that karate.
Yeah. So that's the kind of karate I was coached in up to that point. And then we met Steve Wubel, and we decided that maybe the way that we were training was not as effective or as efficient as it could be. We saw this whole other door of karate opening up, and so we wanted to go that route. And he did the best he could with the knowledge that he had, but his understanding versus what we were trying to do from learning from this higher level instructor, it didn't match up. Right. Layer on top of that he had some very serious, he had really bad hips, and he had both hips replaced whenever I was like 16. And he was never really able to perform. So even to the level that he had been previously, he was not able to perform. So trying to then take that foundation and the physical inability to perform, right, and the also lack of understanding of this higher level karate, and trying to teach that, it led to a lot of confusion. So like when we spend a lot of our podcast kind of like dogging ourselves and kind of laughing about like all of this fundamental stuff that we have had to go back and fix, and this is not like necessarily to the fault of the guy who was teaching me. He just didn't know what he didn't know. And unfortunately, that just means that I have a lot of errors that were not caught early on that I have to now fix. I say have to, that I want to fix because they're technically considered fundamental. But that's where that stemmed from.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Once again, not point a finger of blame. It was just the way that it happened.
Well, Steve says it all the time. He expects teachers to demonstrate what they're teaching. And I think he's referring that to, more importantly, the higher levels, right? Because that demonstrates the understanding cerebrally and physically. You have both, and he sees that's essential to do that. And if you think about what we're working on at that higher level, it's very minute movements, subtle changes, coordination, timing kind of things that, require you to understand how to do it, to teach it.
Right.
And that's what ran into your mentor, was that he God bless the man. He studied film and he put his heart into it, and I got to respect him for that. That is something that I have absolute 100% respect for, was that he dove into it and committed himself.
He would go to the library and spend like hours watching clips on YouTube and reviewing these films, and he would have these DVDs of these instructors that were trying to emulate, and he would be reviewing all of the books that he had, and he did the most that he possibly could, but not having that instruction from a higher level person and like directly, and not having the physical ability, we just hit a wall.
So
that kind of sucked. But there's kind of one other facet to this, actually.
Okay.
So we got one other comment. Okay, so Alberto said, a good example is boxing. Roberto Duran's trainer was an 80-year-old guy named Ray Arcel. Duran learned his boxing skills from Arcel and became one of the greatest boxers of all time. Most football coaches are not playing football.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I would assume that most boxing coaches aren't out in the ring getting their bell rung.
Definitely not at 80.
No.
Well, look at Mike Tyson's coach. I don't remember his name, but if you watch videos of Mike Tyson and he talks about his coach, that dude was in his 80s when Mike Tyson was like 15. And he coached him up. So
I'm sure that some of those guys who are in that more technical, like boxing, things like that, surely they have boxing experience and they understand that, and they've gotten lots of reps in coaching. So I think there's probably something that they're learning from just coaching.
Right.
But they obviously have some understanding.
Yeah.
But also, I think if you're doing technical teaching, you really have to be able to perform it. But what if it's not technical teaching? What if it's strategy? So what if you're a football coach, once again, and you're looking at the big picture, you're looking at strategy, positioning, psychology, you're coordinating other people. I feel like that's kind of a different wheelhouse.
That's crazy you say that, because majority of your offensive coordinators and defense coordinators were traditionally older. But then if you looked at your position coaches on the college level, they were always generally either just out of the league or just out of college, and they were still in tune to what was the young man's game.
Yeah.
That's a good point, man.
Because I bet you that you could have somebody from almost any martial art come in to a Shotokan club, watch two people spar, and they would be able to give them based coaching in sparring based on what they're seeing, because they understand timing and distance and all that kind of stuff. Maybe different technical stuff, different distancing from kicking and punching, but you can pick up on that pretty easily.
Yeah, we experienced that. When we worked with the Muay Thai lady.
Yeah.
She was able to coach us up, even though she was using different language and verbiage. We all were able to translate in our own words how to do it. And that was, again, one of our cool, that was really cool.
Her like bubble of distance was just different. Like her short, medium, long distance was just different than ours, but literally applied identical to basically what we do in sparring. So I would argue that is a different skill set.
Yeah, so it comes back to what I said, which is right, is it depends on the situation.
Right.
It depends on historical background of the teacher, ability to have a trained eye, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
That's probably one thing we've just kind of glassed over is we train so hard to do what we're doing, but have you ever thought about how much training we do to see the wrong? Especially as a teacher, your main job is to go, oh, okay, they missed it here. To be a good coach is to coach up the mistakes, right? And that might be the thing that is like the hidden gem is like, how good is your eye? How good can you see mistakes? How good can you see like good coordination and everything else? So,
and just kind of to hammer this point home with like the strategy kind of stuff, it's like you're developing an eye for that thing,
right?
Not necessarily for the technical stuff. Not to say that you can't do both.
Not the form, right?
But I think too, like, you wouldn't take someone who's got that skill set and put them into it and make them do it, because they may not have the technical skill to be able to, like, you're not going to take a football coach and put him on the line and say, okay, you show us what you mean. He can probably like slow motion demonstrate, but he wouldn't be able to perform to the same technical proficiency as his athletes.
Yeah.
Different skill set, I think.
No, I agree.
That doesn't necessarily require that he's in the game. It more so requires like cognitive ability to be able to see from the outside.
Yeah.
So yeah. Different argument for that one.
Yeah, I think again, when it goes back to the main question, it depends. It really does.
Yes.
Depends on individuals.
Where depends. We've been changing too many diapers.
Yes.
Okay.
Wrong kind of diapers have you got?
I know.
Whose diapers have you been changing?
Hey, one time I ordered diapers from Walmart, and they, for real, I've ordered like size 2 or 3 diapers, and they sent me extra large nighttime underpants Depends for a woman.
Aw, they're trying to tell you something.
Yeah, it was a nightmare trying to send those back. I don't think my kid can fit these. She can fit like a quarter of this, but anyway. Okay, any other thoughts on that?
We really didn't make a clear statement. It was like, kind of, sort of.
I think we did. I mean,
kind of, sort of.
So the short answer is, for technical stuff, yes, I do think you should be able to perform it, barring... If you should have, at some point in your life, been able to perform it.
Yes.
If you could never perform it prior to having physical ailments or getting old, I don't think you're going to have the same level of knowledge. I don't think.
No, I agree.
Based on my experience, you're not going to have the same level of understanding, same depth of understanding if you have never been able to perform it. But if you could perform it at one point and now you just can't do it anymore, I think, you definitely can still coach to the same level.
I agree.
But it just might not be as easy because your students are not going to be able to see it.
Yeah, no, I agree there.
So
that's what you've been working on.
So yesterday we worked on Sensei in the black belt class, and I was trying to not like jump my hip over whenever I do the move from Fuda, like throw your hip out to the side.
Oh, should I?
Like a spat.
One more time? Okay. Yeah.
So when you go from Fuda Dutch into... Oh, I knocked down the mic. Hello, Mike. When I knocked down... Oh, okay, it's dying. When I moved from Fuda Dutch into Zenkusa Dutch, doing the Tatsushuto into reverse punch, I mentioned this last time, but I have like tendency to like jump my hip out to the side and also not really turn into showman. So I was kind of working on that. And what the heck? Why is that still an issue? I have no idea. But anyway, that's what I'm working on. What are you working on?
I improved a little bit on the side thrust kick with the coordination and everything. And I've been keeping it, like, I'm still working on it.
Keeping it real.
Well, just, keeping it in the rotation, still doing the work on it, but not as many reps because I don't want to burn myself out on them. And then now I'm just going through the syllabus and making sure that the katas that are required I've done them and I know the moves and make sure everything's accurate to what I want.
Yesterday we went through Jite and I started into Jin. Oops, that's not good.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned too. I was like,
oops.
Start one kata, end in the other, and be like, oh god, I just messed that one up.
Yeah, so. I'm like stepping back doing the double block, and they're just like throwing their backhand blocking thing down, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Whoops, that's not good.
Yeah.
We fail students on exams for that, so yikes. Okay.
Yay.
All right. Well, this has been fun. Thanks for everybody who responded.
Yeah.
Maybe you're watching this, maybe you're not. But anyway,
yeah.
We appreciate you. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.